As someone who deals in large e-commerce, large product catalogs, complex catalogs, this one is always top of mind for me, which is short-term ROAS versus lifetime value. Now,
Yeah.
not every business has it where lifetime value is very relevant for them. I totally acknowledge that. But for a lot of businesses, they're actually just kind of using that as an excuse. They don't really know that. They're just sort of like, they don't really want to do the analysis, to be completely honest with you. They're like, it doesn't really apply to us. And I look at the numbers and there is clearly lifetime value here that we're not utilizing within our strategy. So, if this is relevant for you and you can back that with some data, there is going to be a trade-off here where sometimes you're going to feel sort of like a cash flow pressure that really loves immediate return on ad spend. It's just that like sort of serotonin drip of like, all right, it's profitable right now. But in reality, especially at scale for larger businesses, you really are hurting your own self long term by over focusing on that immediate reactionary metric that is return on ad spend, because all you're doing now is evaluating right now it's profitable, but you're not doing what potentially your other competitors in the same auctions as you are doing, which is they're actually including and integrating lifetime value into their bids, which means they can bid more aggressively. They can capture market share at a much faster rate than you can. And you might not even realize you're being left behind unless, of course, you have their data, which you won't. So it's something that I'm going to usually try to guide a client towards if they're not already thinking that way. How can we integrate and evaluate lifetime value, and how can we put that into our strategies? It's not going to maybe always be the first thing that we're thinking of or considering. It may not be the number one driving factor in our strategies or our tactics, but it does have to be something that's going to be weighed against short-term ROAS, because not everything is going to work one way or the other. It's not like lifetime value or nothing. Sometimes short-term ROAS is actually going to be the most appropriate thing to be using as a North Star.
But what do people want, mate? You look at the videos on YouTube. Is anyone going how to increase LTV, or are they going how to increase your ROAS this week by 200%?
Well, again, ROAS it's a sexy thing. Any immediate gratification. Humans, we are driven towards that immediate gratification. So it makes sense, and I empathize with stakeholders on that. But again, how much could you be missing out on is the real question.
Yeah, and it depends. And once again, always dependent on the business if they have the availability to do repeat sales and increase that lifetime value, which does move beyond the advertising, and it comes to the business vision of like, how are we going to get people to repurchase in 3, 6, or 12 months? How do we keep them engaged? And then you got to think about email marketing, and that's another strategy that the business has ownership over and responsibility as well. And if you're an advertiser like us, we tend to have these conversations with clients, but as you obviously know, Cory, it's like people don't tend to operate at the same level of us as us in other departments of businesses. So wanting to increase the lifetime value for a client as an advertiser is very hard, because a lot of it is dependent on business decisions, what they decide, their customer journey. Like, if there's someone's buying some clothing, what would be the most appropriate next round of clothing for them? Do they have new product drops, or do they tend to know that people who buy this tend to buy these things? And there's a lot of business intelligence that goes into that. And depending on the level of the business, if they're a small business, medium, or large, the investment of time and energy and effort into those things does range. So that's why it's also challenging, because it might be more beneficial for lifetime value to increase. I think that's the best one. But the capacity of the internal people and the stakeholders to actually facilitate that, very low, usually very low probability, unless like they're very switched on. So then that's why I can understand why people do get so caught on ROAS. It's like, let's just get the money now. That kind of fixes the problem that our back end has an issue with.
Right. Yeah.
It's the same with like lead generation, when like people have bad salespeople, like we just need better quality leads and more of them. So then someone with a really bad sales rate kind of can hit their quota of outcome-based numbers, because it's just like, we've got to, they're just got to hit the numbers. So
got it.
It's very different.
This next one, I think, it's a big one. It's and it's always brought up in the nerdy circles that we hang out on online around PPC and just online marketing in general, and especially in the social media marketing side, which is, I'm going to just say it as like broad reach versus relevance, right? always something that this is where I find businesses, if they've been doing it in-house for a long time, this is where they really find a lot of friction,
Yeah.
where their lack of expertise really starts showing. And and it's not even like throwing shade on those people. It's just you're expected to do so many things working internally in a marketing department. I understand. So when you start getting to where you need to reach maybe a little bit more broad of an audience, but you still need to keep efficiency at a profitable level.
Yeah.
That's when you call the experts, because that is a real tough thing. As no matter what anyone tells you, that is going to be one of the hardest
Yeah.
things that you can try to accomplish.
Do you find that most in-house companies do go for the broad reach over the relevancy?
Over time,
Yeah.
once things reach a point of stability, we're not constantly launching new things. We've kind of gotten out of the game of constant promotions and sprinting to the bottom, if you
Yeah.
will, or whatever they call that. It does get to a point eventually, but I think in a lot of small businesses, it tends to be relevancy first, because that's where the problems lie. That's where the most
Yeah.
immediate obvious problems lie, is a relevancy issue.
Yeah.
But if you work with someone good enough, they're going to recognize where those relevancy issues are. And don't get me wrong, it's never like you're just going to dial in relevancy permanently. That doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
again, unless the business is stagnant, which means it's probably going to die eventually anyway, you're going to have constant relevancy issues
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
start targeting new marketplaces and
Yeah.
new products. So, yeah.
And as the market, even as your existing market changes through economic times or the time of the year, it's just the relevancy of your product at certain service at certain times of the year or at just certain times of economic cycles does change. It
Absolutely.
does change. And
Yeah.
as you're saying this, the thing that comes to mind, and I'm not sure if this is the linkage, is like brand versus direct response. You're trying to do that thing where you've got the broader approach, building the brand versus going for that relevancy direct approach, trying to get people now,
Yep.
and the balance between that. Because, yeah, man, the thing of seeing a lot of most people want the direct relevant approach. They do want it. It's just executed very poorly. And then it ends up being the broad approach accidentally, and it
Yeah,
doesn't even serve them.
that's
It's not
true.
done like, because if you do want to do that broad approach, the branded approach, there are very specific ways you need to go about it.
Mhm.
And those very specific ways are not the same ways that people do accidentally doing the broad market approach.
Well, and I got to say, the reality check here is you might get sold from an agency says we are going to be able to expand your reach. I use expansion very
Oh,
intentionally because
yes.
Google loves putting that in their marketing
Yes.
materials. Expansion, broaden the reach, broaden your audiences, broaden your targeting. But we're not going to sacrifice relevancy, guys. No worries. So we're just going to scale you to the moon, and you won't even have to worry about return ad spend or relevancy tanking at all. But the reality, if you're working with an ethical agency, they're going to be honest with you. They're going to tell you that as you start expanding who you're going after, guess what? You're going to get more irrelevant clicks.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of what we're doing. We're experimenting with a new thing in a new area. You're going to have to figure out where the irrelevancy is coming from so you can negate that. But that's all a part of the iterative process that is paid search or any kind of online marketing.
Definitely, mate.